Hi everyone, thank you for joining this IMSM session on ISO 14001 Environmental Management. I'm Maria Dimitrova, Head of Business Development, and I happen also to be a lead auditor on several management systems. And you're with IMSM, we're a consultancy working worldwide, specializing in small and medium enterprises. So let's review some rules initially. Your mics and cameras are disabled. Reason being, we need to ensure that we have enough internet power to carry on. In case anything happens, my marketing team is behind the scenes and they'll make everything possible to bring me back on your screens. They also will pass across the screen any potential questions or suggestions you might like to make during this presentation. So chats are open in all three main social media platforms we use today to stream this session live. That would be LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. I have prepared two short exercises for you, just to be able to test your knowledge on 14001 quickly, and we'll reveal the correct answers at the beginning of the Q&A session. So you're very welcome as well to contact us and to book a free consultancy session with us if you like. We're a nice bunch of people. We'll be happy to help and answer some questions that you might have with regards to ISO 14001 or any other management system for that matter. So why 14001? Why is it that important? It is important because organizations are increasingly interested in achieving and demonstrating good environmental performance. How? By controlling the impacts of their activities, their products and services on the environment. And for this, there are many organizations that choose to implement an environmental management system based on the ISO 14001 standard, which is exactly environmental management. Why is it so important? Well, here we have prepared, thanks to a nice diagram published in The Economist recently. Let's say that some 1500 years before Christ, that's the era of the Egyptian pharaoh Ahmose I, the level of carbon dioxide in Earth's atmosphere was about 277 parts per million, or ppm. A millennium later, when Buddha attained enlightenment, or a century after that, when Socrates drank his cup of hemlock, the level of CO2 had hardly changed at all. Well, it was barely different when the Tang dynasty in China or the first Muslim caliphate arose in the 7th century, or when the Aztec Empire fell to the conquistadors 9 centuries later on the other side of the world. Mainly, the idea here is to demonstrate that for most of history, the composition of Earth's atmosphere has been as unchanging backdrop to the human drama as the arrangement of its continents or the face of its moon. And suddenly, in the middle of the 19th century, things changed. The CO2 level began to rise, and having stayed between 275 ppm and 285 ppm for millennia, by the 1910s it had reached 300 ppm, and by 2020 it was 412 ppm. Summarizing, in a century or so, a crucial aspect of Earth's workings had undergone a change 100 times greater than had previously been seen in a millennium. Why is that so important? Let's illustrate it with some further diagrams. And it becomes clearly visible if we discuss the formula on our screens. This formula is credited to Yoichi Kaya. Yoichi Kaya is a Japanese energy economist. And the formula links the size of the economy, the scale of emissions, and the amount of carbon in the energy system. As you can see, according to this formula, emissions are the product of population, GDP per head, energy used per unit of GDP, and carbon emissions from that energy. Or according to Yoichi Kaya, to reduce emissions, one must reduce one or more of those four factors. So private and government action on the climate has concentrated on the last two: carbon emissions per unit of energy, or what we know as decarbonization, and energy use per unit of GDP, which is the equivalent of what we know as efficiency. Well, given the insufficient progress, controversy served, and some say it is time to look at the first two. That's quite controversial. So we have people defending degrowth. We have people defending other aspects that may not be well received and well perceived by our modern societies. Without entering into further controversy today, that's not the target of our session. I'm just inviting you one more time to consider the formula and evaluate the impact that we may have with our actions on the environment, and consequently invite you to consider an ISO 14001 management system implementation to help your organization and the wider society to raise awareness and protect the environment from further negative impacts. So, the purpose of this international standard is to provide organizations with a framework to protect the environment and to respond to changing environmental conditions in balance with socioeconomic needs. It specifies requirements that enable an organization to achieve the intended outcomes it sets and thus operate an efficient environmental management system. Well, how does the standard work? The standard works as any other ISO management system standard, thanks to the so-called dynamic cycle or the PDCA cycle, which consists in planning our actions, doing what we have planned for, checking how we have implemented what we have planned for, and act upon any deviations or B, any opportunities for further improvement. How? Again, by planning what we want to do, doing it, checking the results, and acting upon A, any deviations, and B, any opportunities for further improvement. Many years ago, when ISO standards, management system standards, started being implemented in different organizations, the PDCA cycle was represented with these 4 steps. Nowadays, we'll say it most commonly with the concept of leadership in the middle. Why? Because for a management system to be operational, to be useful, to give us results, to make us improve what we do continually, top management is essential. So we expect top management to get involved, to make a strategic decision when they decide to go for a management system implementation. Success factors: top management and their commitment to the system and their commitment to lead the organization and take responsibility for the system implemented and assign responsibilities and authorities to other employees and, generally speaking, interested parties, stakeholders of any kind, to help the organization continually improve its management system. Well, what should we expect top management to get involved with? In the first place, they should take accountability for the effectiveness of the system. They need to make sure that the environmental policy, the environmental objectives are established, that these are compatible with the strategic direction and the context of the organization. What does the context of the organization mean? The context of the organization is our organizational environment, our natural environment, all factors, issues that internally affect our organizations, as well as all factors and issues that may externally affect our organization, such as regulatory requirements, markets, geopolitical situations, etc. So we should expect top management to make sure that we have the resources needed for the environmental management system to be implemented and made available to everyone and to be continually improved. So we should expect them to communicate, to make sure that there is a well-organized, designed, executed communication for people to know how important such a management system is, and to be aware of their role within the organization to improve the management system functioning. So we talk here promoting continual improvement. Which are the essential stages? As we said, we have 4 essential stages. Planning. During this stage, risks and opportunities are identified. And with ISO standards, we talk always risks and opportunities together. We don't focus only on internal risks, but consider any potential opportunities as well. Logical risks may lead to some opportunities, and there are opportunities that may condition additional risks that we need to evaluate. We need to assess those risks. So we establish our environmental objectives and we plan on how to achieve those. Then we'll need to make sure that we have the resources, competencies needed, that we are, all of us, aware of how important the system is and what is required for it to function. And again, we'll need to articulate communication process that helps us improve our operations, our system, and we need to document. Actually, when we talk ISO standards, management system standards, there's something quite simple to bear in mind to comply, to conform with the standards. As long as we do what we say and we say what we do, there's ground to believe that our system is going to be successful. So many organizations tend at the beginning to do what they want, what they say, sorry, but from time to time to kind of skip telling what they've done. That would be counterproductive. ISO standards don't tell you what to do and how to do it. They just help you identify what you actually do. And if you state what you do, you quickly see potential failures or potential areas for improvement. Next stage, that will be our operation stage, planning and control, and very important, our preparedness for emergency responses. Back to my initial point, evaluation. ISO standards help us evaluate what we do by monitoring, measuring, monitoring, auditing, and we audit internally in the first place to find conformity first, and then potentially areas for improvement. This is important because ISO standards actually help us find evidence of conformity. They're not meant to make us feel uncomfortable when being audited, either internally or externally. Second party audit by customers or third party audits when we invite a certification body to independently assess and potentially certify our system. ISO standards are meant to help organizations identify what they do efficiently and achieve continual improvement. They mentioned audits. Audits are an important element of making sure that our system works, and they may be internal audits and external audits. As I say, external audits carried out by our customers, other interested parties as second part audits or third part audits when we actually seek to get to certify conformity to the requirements of this standard. Well, and again, the system works, apologies for the misspelling on this site. The system works when it is reviewed by management on plan intervals and management takes into account all the consideration, all the requirements of the standard for their reviews to evaluate results. And when non-conformities, first area for improvement and then non-conformities potentially are defined and corrected to eventually achieve better results and improve the system. Now, let's have a look at a tiny, very short exercise just to test our knowledge on ISO 14001. We have a company that would be Tina Love Ltd, which is dedicated to the commercialization of second-hand clothing and items. To the specific treatment used, the company has decided to implement an environmental management system in integration with its quality management system. This means that the organization already operates a quality management system in conformity with the standard ISO 9001. Well, the company plans to implement the environmental management system in conformity with ISO 14001 in its 3 centers and plans to certify them centrally, that is, certifying its headquarters to cover all 3 locations. Is the company's approach correct? Well, a couple of minutes only for you just to consider the answer. Well, in this case, the approach wouldn't be correct for a very simple reason. ISO 14001 is peculiar in a couple of aspects, and certifying different locations is one of them. Quite often get questions around exactly the same issue, and these questions the result of organizations having and operating a quality management system which does allow for centralized implementation and certification, and then extending the scope to additional locations. When it comes to ISO 14001, please remember that it requires that each location is certified separately in an independent way. Why? Because different legal requirements, local requirements, national requirements, etc., may apply. So ISO 14001 requires for each center, each location, to be independently audited, as opposed to other ISO standards that allow for a more centralized auditing to be carried out. Let's have another look. This is a list documents that may or may not be required as documented information, or what we previously knew as records, etc. Why is this example on screen? Basically, because many organizations think that implementing an ISO compliant management system actually requires quite a lot of documentation to be created. It certainly was the case years ago when ISO standards were quite not that developed as they're nowadays. And I agree it was complicated to create all the documents, manuals, procedures, etc. required. So for the last several years, however, most standards have been adapted to our new environment and made much more flexible and allows for fewer documents to be fewer documents to be created and recorded as documented information by the organization. So let's have a look. Which of the following elements must be documented according to the standard? The scope of the system, the environmental policy, risks and opportunities, competences, environmental objectives, organization size and activity, complexity of processes and interactions, stakeholders relevant to the system, environmental objectives. So let's say that I could add more elements. The ones that we'll identify as required are not the only ones required. There are a couple, several more, not that many though. But the example here is just brought your attention to make sure to explain that not everything needs to be documented. For instance, although we must take into account our stakeholders' requirements and needs, we don't need actually to document the interested parties as documented information. It's a common method to keep an eye on our stakeholders, but actually it is not a requirement of the standard. We don't need to document how big our organization is or give any further details about the organization, such as number of people, etc., etc. We don't need to document how complex our processes are or how they interact unless we want to. Now, we need to document stuff such as the scope of the environmental management system, our environmental objectives, risks and opportunities. We should be able to produce documented information on the competencies, etc. There are some requirements for documented information, but not as many as usually companies, organizations think. So our advice would be for you guys just to talk to your assessors. If you talk to any consultancies around, or give us a call, or if you have the resources, just read through the standards, identify what you need to do to make sure that you actually feel confident and comfortable with the standards. So we always advise organizations that ISO standards offer quite a number of benefits. Sometimes I talk about the number of benefits being as broad as a number of organizations willing to implement an ISO compliant management system. So if you'd like to see what benefits you may find When operating a system, just read through the standard or talk to your consultants. So there are two options. You either outsource service or have the resources to do it on your own. There is no a right or wrong way of doing it, as long as you do it, in my opinion. And my personal opinion on benefits is that there is one very important benefit of implementing ISO 14001, that would be the possibility for certification. So ISO 14001 is a certifiable standard. It means, again, that once you implement your system, you make it work, you may decide to invite an independent third-party certification body to assess your system and how it works, and potentially, eventually, issue a certificate of conformity against the requirements of the standard that would give you further international recognition. That's a very powerful marketing tool. It's a very powerful tool to ensure further customer trust and the stakeholders' trust, generally speaking. So a third party certification means that you commit to annual regular checks, and it means that your own organization is going to perform better, seeking to be always on top of its responsibilities towards the environmental management system functioning, in order to prove each year that you continually improve your operations. So it gives you further support in your own operations and your attitude towards environment and the broader society. Well, thank you for listening. That would be all for today. Please follow us on social media. We're on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube. You may also like to send us an email to marketing@imsm.com. We'll be happy to answer all your questions. Just allow me to check with marketing if we have received any questions today. Oh, yeah, I see we have received a question. How does ISO 50001 links to 14001? Well, let's say that we're talking two different standards in here. ISO 14001 is environmental management, and 50001 is energy efficiency. ISO 14001 does consider some energy aspects, although 50001 is a standard that would help you implement, operate, and improve an energy efficiency management system. That's an interesting question. Basically, because most organizations think that ISO 50001 applies only to big organizations that are sizable energy consumers. That wouldn't be correct. That's an ISO standard, and all ISO management system standards apply to all kinds of organizations. No matter how big they are, no matter what industrial sector they operate on. In this case, for 50001, it doesn't matter how much energy an organization consumes to be able to qualify, to put it in a way, for an ISO 50001 implementation. So again, if you have any doubts, talk to your consultants or to your internal management resources. Read through 50001 as well, and you'll see how it could help you improve your energy efficiency operations. Let's say that people may be quite surprised when they get to know the standard content. So I encourage you to have a look at 50,001 as well, and to talk to us. This is a very important standard nowadays, so keep in mind that you can benefit from this one as well. In terms of links, currently all ISO management system standards benefit from a common framework that would be the SL structure. So once you implement a management system in conformity with one standard, you can then integrate further management system within, and if you already operate 14,001 or any other management system standard, it would be much easier for you to add the requirements of 50,001 on top of what you have already implemented within your organization. Marketing, do we have any further questions here? I think you're muted, Caroline.
That's just one question, Maria, just one today. So bye.
Okay. Bye. Thank you very much. Bye.